This one's going to be fun. Do you know that feeling when you kind of get a promotion, you get promoted, and you immediately start thinking, oh my God, they're going to find out that I actually have got no idea what I'm doing. And you know that person every group, in every group project who contributes absolutely nothing, but somehow thinks they are carrying the entire team. If you felt this before, if you've come across this feeling before, congratulations. You've just experienced both ends of the competence confidence spectrum. And your brain is lying to you in completely opposite ways. Welcome back to Huddle Psychology, where we get uncomfortably real about the stuff going on in your head. I'm Rahul Nair, and we are here to decode the psychology behind all the things, all the weird things that we actually do. So, let's lay this out to begin with. We need to really talk about the competence crisis happening in our generation. On the one side, you have incredibly capable people who are convinced that they are frauds. On the other side, you have, at best, mediocre people convinced that they are absolute geniuses. That's a problem. And somehow, the people who should be confident just aren't. And the people who shouldn't be confident definitely are. So, this is kind of screwing up almost everything from job interviews, relationships, creative projects, even social interactions. Basic social interactions. Qualified people are holding themselves back while unqualified people are actually running the show. And social media is making it lot more worse because we can now see everyone's highlight reels while knowing our own behind the scenes struggles. But here's what's really wild. Both imposter syndrome and the Dunning-Kruger effect are actually features, not bugs, features of how our brain actually works. Understanding them can help you figure out whether you're actually incompetent or just competent enough to know how much you don't know. So, let me break this down a little bit. Imposter syndrome is when you feel like a fraud despite evidence of your competence. You think you've fooled everyone, fooled them into thinking you're good at something, and you live in kind of this constant fear of being found out. And here's a fun fact. This was first studied in high achieving women in 1970s, but it affects everyone. The Dunning-Kruger effect, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's when people with very little or limited competence overestimate their abilities. Don't want to name names, but a lot of people around who may be doing just that. They literally don't know enough to know how much they don't know. Let me repeat that. They just don't know enough to know how much they don't know. The original study showed that people who scored in the bottom 25% of tests of logic, grammar, and believe me, humor consistently overestimated their performance. So, I mean, isn't it kind of funny that these people think they are funny when they are actually not very funny at all? That's why I said this is going to be fun. Here's the mind bending part though. Both of these syndromes happen, both of these feelings happen because of the same psychological mechanism. Our ability, and listen to this very, very carefully, our ability to accurately assess our own competence is directly related to our actual competence. Let me say that again. Our ability to accurately our own competence, assess our own competence, is directly related to our actual competence. So, what that means is if you're truly incompetent, then you lack the knowledge to realize you're incompetent. You think everyone else is kind of just overthinking things. If you're actually competent, on the other hand, you have enough knowledge to see all the things that you actually don't know, which makes you feel incompetent. So you see how, it's rather funny. Imposter syndrome shows up in many instances. Let me give you a few examples. Attributing success to luck rather than skill, perfectionism and overworking to prove yourself, fear of taking on new challenges that might expose you as fraud or incompetent, comparing your internal struggles to somebody else's external success. And what about Dunning-Kruger? Dunning-Kruger shows up as overconfidence in areas where you have little to no experience, dismissing expert advice as overthinking, or not seeking feedback or improvement because you think you're already so good, and being surprised when things actually don't go as perfectly as you had expected. Now, what's the cruel irony here? Well, the people with imposter syndrome are often the most competent because competence breeds awareness of complexity. The people with Dunning Kruger, on the other hand, are often the least competent because incompetence breeds false confidence. So, how do you figure out which one you're actually dealing with? Let me give you 3 reality checks. Number 1, the feedback test. How do you respond to constructive criticism? If you immediately get kind of defensive and think the person doesn't get it, you might be in Dunning Kruger territory. If you spiral and think, oh my God, they've kind of figured me out, I'm a fraud, then you might have imposter syndrome. Competent people with healthy self awareness and self esteem usually think that constructive feedback or constructive criticism is useful information. The second reality check is the learning curve check. When you start something new, what's your timeline expectation? Dunning Kruger people expect to be good immediately, and they get very frustrated when there's a learning curve, which means it naturally takes some time. Imposter syndrome people expect to be terrible forever and are shocked actually when they actually improve. Realistic people, on the other hand, the middle ground, they expect steady improvement over time with respect to the kind of effort and time they put in to something. The third reality check, the final reality check, is the expertise gradient. What do I mean by this? In your areas of actual expertise, how confident do you feel? If you're genuinely good at something but still feel like a fraud, that's classic imposter syndrome. If you think you're an expert with minimal experience, that's classic Dunning-Kruger. True experts, on the other hand, true experts usually feel confident in their core competencies, but they remain humble about their own limitations. So here's the plot twist. I told you this was going to be fun. Here's the plot twist. The goal isn't to eliminate these feelings entirely. A little bit of imposter syndrome can make you work harder and stay humble, which is good. And a little bit of confidence, even if it's slightly overblown, can help you take necessary risks. So, both are actually needed in certain amounts. So, the goal here is calibration, matching your confidence to your actual level of competence. What this means? This means basically celebrating genuine wins instead of simply attributing them to luck, seeking feedback actively, especially when you feel confident. Remembering that everyone is figuring it out as they go is something very important to remember. Understanding that competence is actually contextual. You can be an expert in one area and a beginner, a complete beginner in another. So, having said all this, here's your homework for this week. Pick one area of your life, any one area of your life where you either feel like a fraud or feel like you're really crushing it. Ask someone, ask someone's opinion, ask someone whose opinion you actually trust for honest feedback about your performance in that area. Not validation, not criticism, actual feedback about your strengths and areas of improvement in that area. And remember, if you're worried you don't know what you're doing, you probably know more than you think and more than you give yourself credit for. And if you're sure you know what you're doing, then you might want to double check that. So that was that. Next week, we are going to be talking about the soft life movement. Soft life movement, the TikTok trend of choosing ease and luxury over hustle and struggle. But we are going deeper. We are going to go deeper. Is this actually radical self care, or is it some kind of privileged avoidance dressed up as wellness? It's going to get spicy next week. Anyway, meanwhile, do drop me a comment below and let me know, have you ever been on either side of this confidence and competence gap? Let's normalize the fact that figuring out what you're good at is actually a lifelong process. And if you want to, as always, go deeper, check out huddlepsychology.substack.com for the full research breakdown on this topic. And if you need to talk one-to-one, one-on-one, hit me up at rahul@huddlepsychology.com, and I'll try and respond as soon as possible. So until next time, keep huddling, keep growing. Ciao for now.